What are you training for?
Life.
Welcome to Train for Life, a podcast brought to you by ISI Elite Training. I'm Adam Rice, founder and CEO, and we'll be hosting this alongside Amanda Hall, our COO. Tune in weekly as we explore topics on personal and professional development to help you level up in all aspects of your life. We call this Training for Life. All right, welcome back to the Train for Life podcast. Today we're going to be talking about a subject that I think is relevant to all of us, and that is going from good to great in our life. And no matter what area in your life, we're going to talk about all the different areas, and let's talk about good to great. So, Amanda, tell me, define, and just so you guys know, when we sit down for these podcasts, they're not scripted. So it's very conversational.
Let's give a disclaimer.
A lot of times, we don't know what we're going to ask each other. We just kind of let it roll. But define your definition of good, and then give me your definition of great, and then we'll kind of bridge the gap and work backwards through that.
That's a good question. If I think about it, like, what would I say good is? It's hard for me because I think unless you have a vision of what great would be, it's hard to define what good is. Meaning if to me good is you're not where you want to be yet, or you have a place that you want to go, or a vision for what great would be in your life, like personally, professionally, maybe as a mom or as a friend, but your good level means you're just not achieving that.
Yeah.
If I had to describe it, I don't know necessarily how I'd define it. It'd be interesting to know what the definition of good is versus great. But when I think of it in life, I feel that it means that you aren't living up to the full potential in that area that you want to live in.
I'll go ahead and whip out my phone and let's just look at it. So the definition of good. Good old Google. Good is having the qualities required for a particular role, or to be desired or approved of. And that's really what it's giving us.
What's great?
Let's switch this. So then great is of an extent, amount, or intensity considerably above the normal or average. Or the second one here is of ability, quality, or eminence considerably above normal or average. It's funny because one of my favorite sayings is, you've heard me say it, is resist average. And I say that a lot, and a lot of people, I've actually had people get defensive around that and like get offended by that.
Why? Because they feel like average is good enough?
Maybe, but I think the saying, right? It's like, hey, like everybody can't be great or whatever it is, and it depends on the context of what you're saying, right? If you're talking body composition, of course there's going to be people that get offended about that. But really the spirit of resist average is resist your own average. Because I think when you dial in, like so many of us, if you really peel back and you look at, okay, what area of our life are we good at? And then that word of complacency creeps up. I see so many people that are complacent. And then they have these like motives to be great, but they're not doing the actions. And then I think so many people, and I've been in this place where I wanted to be great in a certain category, but it was all driven from an improper, unfulfillable desire, right? Whether it's a label or
I was going to say, what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
Like an unfillable desire.
Yeah, like, so say I want to go from good to great, going from making, as just an example, making $100,000 a year to making $1 million a year, just to say I'm a millionaire, right? And not really to truly understand what the vehicle of money can do and how it can give back and how it's going to fulfill you. Because we talked about it in an early episode, like there's so many millionaires out there that are miserable. And then the other way is, people want to go from good to great, meaning in their body. Right now maybe they're sitting at, 220 pounds. They want to get down to 200, but the desire, the motive behind it is for other people's approval, to have a six-pack, not to be more mentally clear, to have more confidence, and to be a better human. It's literally out of the fact of approval for others, because they're in an Instagram world seeing comparison, and comparison is the thief of joy. So I'm curious what your thoughts are about that. Would you agree?
Yes. I think your motives change throughout life. I think the older you get, the more it really comes from a place of what really will fulfill you versus trying to be great at something just for the approval of others, or so you could say, oh, I'm a millionaire, or I did this. So it's hard because sometimes I think you need those things at certain phases of your life to motivate you and to push you out of your comfort zone. And then on the flip side of that, do you find through that really the motivation that it really is something that you want to achieve, and why did you want to do it to begin with? Do you have an area in your life that you could say today, I was good at this and I went to great?
Yeah, I think it's like an area that I'm walking through right now, and that's, for me, my body composition. So I'm just turned 35. And I'd say right now I'm in the best shape of my life. So, was I good? Questionable. It depends by what metric you're measuring that, right? I was at, back about a year ago, I was at about 21% body fat, 235 pounds. Today I'm sitting about 215, close to 10% body fat. So that's, in many people's eyes, would be going from good to great. And for me, that's totally, like, it's not an approval of others. So to me, that is an area of my life that I've gone from good to great because the outcome of what it does for me, right? It makes me a better leader because I'm more confident. I'm not doubting myself in conversations anymore. Like those types of things, I think carry over. I'm a better father. I'm leading by example. Like all of those things, right?
How did you make the realization? Obviously, you had a desire. If you felt like you were good in something, you had a desire knowing that you could be better, right? I could be great at this, or I'm not great yet because I'm not where I want to be.
Yep.
What made you switch to take the actions to get to great in that area?
I think it was a conviction, right? It's like we talked about this on another. You can't lead a life you don't live.
Right.
So like being a CEO of a fitness brand, like who am I to, to be average in that category? Not to say that I have to be a bodybuilder, right? But if I'm not optimizing myself in every area, then how could I expect others? So for me, it was a deep conviction. But I also think like the thing that actually took me there was like little fundamental. We talk about habits, increasing that, and then ultimately like self-awareness. Like I started paying attention to how I feel when I eat certain things, when I do certain things. And for me, and this is not for everybody, but for me, my body does not do well with bread, not carbs, but bread. Right. So that's why I tell you all the time, like, I'm not eating bread. Don't let me eat bread. It's because once I do, like, I will want to eat it and eat it and eat it. And for me, that's what packs on weight. And so if I can just cut bread.
That's me and candy.
Yeah, sugar.
Once I eat it, I'm going to keep eating it.
Right.
That's true.
So good to great. I want to talk about, like, kind of take a left turn here and go, I want to look at risk mitigation from good to great, because we see it all the time, right? We have people that are coming through that have a desire to, maybe they're in corporate America, maybe they're in pharmaceutical sales. They're not fulfilled. They don't have purpose,
Right.
but they're making, $200,000 a year. They have the financial money that they've always wanted, but they don't have the freedom. And for them to go from what they would maybe perceive today as good, right? I'm financially stable. I'm providing for my family, but I'm just not fulfilled. So their next level is great, and that's through entrepreneurship. How do you think someone makes that decision? Because it takes risk, right, to go from good to great. It takes getting outside your comfort zone. And how does that play into other people's lives? Like if somebody's out there and they have a desire in any area of their life to go from good to great, like things are good, I'm good, but I want to be, this next level of leader, or this next level of mom, or this next level in my faith, or whatever it is. Like, what do they have to like zone in on and do you think?
I mean, I think the first step is you have to take an action. You have to do something different than what you're already doing to get a different outcome. So if you find yourself stuck and you're not where you want to be, you're not going to be able to keep doing, whether that's a lifestyle or choices that you're making that are going against what great is. I think a lot of times we may think, oh, I need to do this to be great or to get better in this, but we often don't think about the things that we need to stop doing as well. So I think it's a combination of both. But I know we talked about drive and people being driven. I think you have to reach a point where, not everybody, but a lot of people have to reach a point almost of pain in where they are, that they refuse to stay there any longer. So whatever's keeping them from going from good to great, if it's comfort, fear, I think there's numerous things that, depending on what that great is for you, that keeps you from that, especially when you're talking about moving from the comfort of maybe corporate America into the freedom of entrepreneurship. I always tell people, like, run a cons list. What are the pros and the cons? Because oftentimes what you're telling yourself isn't real, right? The pros are so much greater than the cons. And you only get, my thought process on a lot of things is you get one life here on this earth. Right. There's really not much that can happen to you that, I don't think there's anything that can happen to you that we're not made to handle. So I think it's making the decision looking at where you are and making the decision to not accept good any longer. Yeah. To say, I'm ready to move into great. And if you start taking actions and you see that building along the way, you start to build that confidence muscle that pushes you along that path, and surround yourself with someone who already is where you want to go. Mm-hmm. Ask them what it's like. If you need to get the picture clear, right? Because sometimes I think it's, you have a vision of what great is, and you think you know what it would feel like. So find someone who's there and ask them, hey, how did you get there? What did it feel like along the way? Oftentimes, whatever that is to make that path happen will become much clearer, and then it's you can visualize it, and then you can achieve it. So, I think to go there, people are driven by two different things. They're driven by someone else that they get around that motivates them, and they realize they can do it, or they're driven by the pain is so great where they are, they're not willing to settle for it any longer. Yeah. Well, I don't know. Point. What do you think?
It's funny because I have conversations with people, and ultimately, like, at the end of the day, they're like, hey, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to get this result, whether it's in their body, in their business, in their being, in their relationships, but they're not doing it. Was it Einstein that said the quote, like, insanity is doing the same thing, expecting a different result? Right. That's what so many of us are doing, right? I'm to blame of that in different areas of my life too. So how are we ever, and this is hopefully a wake-up call for somebody listening to this, how are you sitting there expecting a different result but doing the same thing? Like, it's so common sense, but I think so oftentimes we overcomplicate things. We look at our business model and we look at the fundamentals. It's how many people are you calling a day? How many conversations are you having? How many bookings and first visits? Like, it's not hard, but they're not doing the actions required to get a different result, right? And so if you look at, and this is business just in general, if you're in sales, well, I got 100 leads last month and I'm on pace to get 100 leads this month. Your result is not going to change, right? Right. I went to the gym 3 times, or 3 times on average last month per week. Well, to change something, go 5, right? Or we talked about it in, earlier, was like, how do you, and I'll let you kind of wrap up this episode with this, of somebody who maybe they're habitually in a good place with, we see it all the time in fitness, right? They're going to the gym, they're at ISI 5-6 days a week, but they're a year later, they haven't gotten any results. And it's not because of the workouts. Yeah.
What do they do?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say if your end result is just to be stronger, and that feeling from working out, if that's great for you, great. Yep. If I see a lot of times when someone wants a body change and they get some results from working out, but then they aren't focused on the diet and nutrition, which we know is good. It will go hand in hand. So for them to go from good to great, they have to do all the work, not just part of the work, right? And you have to get really real with yourself. And then you have to, this is coming from personal experience. Yeah. Like, when my nutrition isn't in check, I don't feel as good, and I'm not in the great, but that is a choice. And I would end with this. I think to go from good to great, you have to realize that 100% of that is in your control. Yeah. Meaning, we talk about extreme ownership all the time. I think in leadership, you hear the term extreme ownership a lot, but do we hear it in our life? You have extreme ownership of what you respond to, what you choose to do, where you want to go. So the choice to not do something that you know you want to do and to sit in that feeling of, man, I really want this. If you've said something to yourself for the last 2 or 3 years, like, make a plan, go and do it. Like, you have the control to do it. Or, you know, on the flip side of that, it's like, maybe it's not that important to you. Like, get real with yourself. But I think anytime you are thinking in life, like, how do I go from good to great? You have to define what that great and that vision is for you. And then you have to realize you're in control to do it.
Yeah. Transformation. You know? I mean, transformation starts with truth, right? Here's the thing is, like, I can't tell you how many people, it's crazy to me. They're like scared to look at their bank account, right? Because they don't know. And so they just sit in this area of like, well, if my next transaction goes through, I'm good.
Yeah.
But you have to know, like, you have to know where you're at today in your relationships. You have to know where you're at in your career. And then I think the biggest thing that I would leave us with is good and great is your own definition. So many people put on a pinnacle to say, you know, how many other female leaders have come up to you and say, I want to be a CEO of a brand.
Right.
And the reality is, like, some probably really do, right? But then some, like, are you willing to sacrifice? Are you willing to sit in the hard conversations, to go through personal development? Like, every next level has a level of sacrifice, and you're great. Maybe somebody else is good. I don't think we're all, like, born, because I'll tell you, like, I think I'm a really good dad, and my version of a great dad is probably somebody else's version of a good dad, right? And I think we're all at these different places. We could talk about faith and relationships and career and all of that. So I'd say, like, stop comparing yourself to other people's and, like, tell the truth of where you're good and what your great looks like. And ultimately, you're going to be way more fulfilled, because sometimes it's okay to just be good in an area if you don't want to be great, right? Because it's going to take sacrifice, and typically, you know, it's going to affect another area in your life. And I think when you're fully optimized, you can be great in all areas, but that takes time and capacity and experience and all that to get to that level.
Yeah, it's good.
All right, guys. Well, until the next episode, we are in the heat of season 2. It's been fun so far, and don't miss out on the next episode. So until next time, we'll see you on the turf.